What's good, y'all? I appreciate everybody for tuning in, man. I appreciate everybody for watching the videos. It's crazy, man. My relationship with Arab started with Dark Low. I really appreciate Dark Low for introducing me to Ab. I appreciate Dark Low for everything he's done for me throughout the years, as far as, interviews, doing records. But let's get right back into this thing. Everybody take a second to subscribe to Report Card Radio. Make sure you hit that bell so you get all notifications. You dig? Sorry. All right, let's get back into it. So this Mr. Goldman goes back into it. This is right after Taz had denied to see the transcript of when a homicide detective had told him he'd be out of jail in 10 years. The detective was 42. Taz is 32. He told him, you'll be out by the time you're my age. I got little to no respect for a cop saying that to somebody who has a couple bodies on him. So Mr. Goldman, Arab's lawyer, continues. So you didn't decide to flip back there in July of 2018, but you did just about a month ago. And you are now looking at a lot of time before Judge Bailson, correct? Correct. Now you entered what's called a cooperation plea. That's what we're going to focus on here, the cooperation plea. Apparently, Taz had not flipped by 2018, but by that time they'd only been in jail a few months. Taz was in jail, I think, a few months before Ab. Now you entered what's called a cooperation plea agreement with the government, did you not? Correct. Who is it that has the power to recommend to the judge that you get below what the sentencing guidelines call for in this case? The judge. Well, actually, did you read your plea agreement? I read it over. The plea agreement provides that it's the prosecutors, the government's right, that right now you're facing some serious time, but they, in your plea agreement, they are the ones in their sole discretion that can recommend to the judge either that he comes below the guidelines or he comes below any mandatory minimum. You're aware of that, aren't you? Yeah. Now, do you remember, say, what drug deals you did on the first week of October? What year, the judge asks. I'm sorry, 2017, the witness. I don't remember that far back of every drug deal I made. Mr. Goldman continues, okay, so if I went over any dates you say with me, you met my client. Do you know any dates that you met with my client? No, I don't know any of those dates. And this is during the period of time where we talked lengthily yesterday that you're smoking 20 to 30 times a day, correct? Correct. Now you remember telling the agents that the first time you met Mr. West, you wanted to shoot him. You wanted to kill him. Do you remember that? Wow, this is breaking. Taz, the first time you met Arab, wanted to do harm to him? This is breaking right here. Checkmate. Let's continue on. Let's see where this goes. Now remember telling the agents that the first time you met Mr. West, Abdul West, Arab, you wanted to shoot him. You wanted to kill him. Do you remember saying that? Yeah. Because you didn't like what he was saying, correct? Correct. The agents told you back in July of 2018, did you know that Mr. West put out a rap video where he has publicly stated that you killed Robbie Johnson? Do you remember the agents telling you that? Yeah. You didn't know that until they told you that, right? So we know that when you don't like that, Mr. West was saying when you first met him, and that was enough for you to want to kill him. He's now talking trash about you, and he's telling the world that you committed a murder. I think that line was, notify his mom we pushed the button on it. His rap sheet had some mustard on it. Not saying anything, I'm just saying that might be the lyric. He's notify his mom we put the button on him. His rap sheet had some mustard on it. All right, so I'll go back over it. Mr. Goldman says, so we know that when you don't like that what Mr. West was saying when you first met him, and that was enough for you to want to kill him, he's now talking trash about you, and he's telling the world that you committed a murder, correct? Incorrect. He's not telling the world that you were involved in a murder by singing a public song about Taz going out and killing someone. You said talking trash. That would be more bragging, giving somebody props on what they're doing. You didn't mind him telling publicly, you were involved in a murder? It's not that I didn't mind. Why would you go tell somebody in your raps that a person that you deal with just committed a murder for you? or just committed a murder, period. Exactly. And that kind of upset you, didn't it? I mean, I didn't feel any type of way at the time. I'm sorry. I didn't feel any type of way at the time because I didn't know how to take it. Wow, this is interesting because this is one of the biggest questions we all had was Arab using his lyrics, using the facts of life, because when Arab would run out of studio, he'd invite all of his gangster homies out and he'd just go one to one to one homie. He'd listen to their stories and then he would put that in his bars. That's how Ab would rap. That's how he would do it. He'd go to the studio. He's even said this before. He'd probably make one good song a night, but he'd book like 5 hours in the studio, bring all the homies out, and then he'd get a collection of stories, like Taz's story. When Taz was, as Mr. Goldman said, sitting, chilling. Do you like sitting and chilling, rolling your blunts, 30 blunts a day? Ab took Taz's story, put it in the song, and that's what the lawyer's going over right now. So let's get back to it. So Taz said he didn't feel any type of way at the time because he didn't know how to take it. It's like Taz loved it, but he didn't know how to take it. You didn't know how to take the fact that he was singing public songs about you killing someone. I don't know how to take it. I didn't have any feelings on how I felt at the time about it. How do you feel about it now? Like, why would you do that? Was that worse than when he was saying to you when you wanted to kill him back in 2016? Whatever he said to you back in 2016, telling people that you committed a murder publicly, that's even worse than what he said to you back in 2016, right? Incorrect. You said 2016. Whenever. 15, 16, 17. When is it that you wanted to kill Mr. West? When I first met him. 2010. What year? 2010. 2010? Uh-huh. Okay. It's quoted in an FBI report about that 2010 that you, quote, wanted to shoot the shit out of him because of his big mouth. Do you remember that? Yeah, I remember. You're not supposed to lie anyways. That's part of your plea agreement, is it not? Yeah. And Mr. Witherall asked you, the prosecutor asked you yesterday, did you see guns around the mansion with the people of the mansion? And you told the jury, yeah, everybody had weapons. Remember that? Yeah. Well, that's a lie, isn't it? No. Hans Gadsden, you never saw him with a gun, did you? No. So telling the jury yesterday that everybody at the mansion, and you told us that Mr. Gadsden himself was at the mansion, that everybody had guns would be a lie that you stated yesterday. Objection. Incorrect, because you're twisting it up. Mr. Goldman then goes on, let's see if I can dissect that. You said yesterday, everybody at the mansion, it was a broad question asked by Mr. Wetherall. Did you see any weapons? My recollection. And you say, yeah, everybody there had weapons. Okay. Yeah. You agree with that? Yeah. And that's a lie, is it not? Because my client, you never saw him ever once in your life with a weapon, correct? Correct. But I never seen him at the mansion all that time. He might be outside of the mansion. Being inside the mansion is different from being inside the house. Let me develop that. So are you saying that my client was not a regular person at the mansion when you were there? Right. And you, in fact, used the terms that in talking to the prosecutor, allegations of violence here, that my client was, excuse the expression, it's yours, was soft as duck shit. You said that, did you not? Correct. So from your observations now we know, from my client, Mr. Gadsden, we know that he was not a regular person when you were going to the mansion. Number one, correct? Correct. You never saw him with a weapon, correct? Correct. And a man like you, and we know about you, consider him to be soft. Is that correct? Correct. And to make it clear, you said yesterday he had no idea that Robbie Johnson was going to be murdered. Correct? Correct. Now you're getting weed from the mansion also, were you not? Yeah. Now let me ask you just a few more questions, and we're getting towards the end of this. In the plea agreement, it provides that if you provide any untruthful testimony, they wrote this, that they can pull this plea agreement away from you. Do you know that? Yeah. So the government could pull this plea agreement away from you for saying, if they believe that your testimony was untruthful about my client yesterday. Do you understand that? Yeah. Do you remember back in July of 2007, Agent Simpson and Task Force Officer Stevens asked you about meth dealing, and you told them, I ain't never sell meth. Remember telling them that? Yeah. Now we know from yesterday that as recent as October 19, 2017, which would be about 7 months before this interview, you sold meth to the cooperating individual. We heard the tapes yesterday. Do you remember that? Wow, that's crazy because that was one of the big things is when Taz brought the CI to the mansion and he sold the confidential informant $200 worth of meth as well as a gun. But this is pretty crazy because Mr. Goldman is doing just as good as Kaz's lawyer did the other day when Kaz's lawyer made it seem like he had nothing to do with this guy Taz, and now they're making it look like Hans, no breaks bras, free bras. They're making it look like Bras was in there with no weapons. Me personally, I never saw no breaks Bras doing anything like that. He was a music head to me. Now, we know from yesterday that as recent as October 19th, which would be about 7 months before this interview, you sold meth to the cooperating individual. We heard the tapes yesterday. Do you remember that? I remember. So you telling the agents I ain't never sell meth is a lie, is it not? Incorrect. See, this is where you get it wrong. That I never sold meth before. That's what I said. That was my first time selling it. First time ever selling meth was to the CI. Mr. Stewart, is that interview, it was never brought up, that incident. It was never discussed in that 30 pages, anything about the meth sale. That didn't come up. The only question you put to you was, have you ever sold meth? And you stated to them, I ain't never sell meth, okay? In that interview, you also say, I'll go to the transcript if you want, that I wouldn't even know anybody who would buy meth. Do you remember that? I remember. But you did know somebody. You knew that cooperator whose name didn't come up during this interview. Blindside is his code name. You knew Blindside would buy meth. As a matter of fact, in that transcript we heard yesterday, Blindside's telling you, hey, I want to get some more meth from you. You go, okay, I'll get you some. Remember that? I remember. So it was a lie when you said you ain't never sell meth, correct? It wasn't no lie. Okay. Back in the same interview, they said, we're going to ask you a question, and we'll be gauged by your answer. Who was the other person you were with when Robbie was killed? It's the agent saying to you, now is your time. You tell us who was with you. What's his name? When Robbie Johnson was murdered, do you remember your answer? You got the transcript. Read it. Taz says, do you know the answer? Do you remember it? I don't remember. I don't know the bull's name. That was a lie, wasn't it? Yeah, the whole interview was like, so you were prepared to lie during however long it takes to do a 30-page interview to the FBI, to homicide detectives in Philadelphia, to task force officers, to protect yourself. Is that correct? You just said, the court, let him answer the question. Can you answer that? The witness, yeah, I can say this. When I gave that interview when I first got arrested or recharged for the federal drug indictment, but it was questions from homicide. Yeah, I was trying to cover my ass and cover the dudes I was dealing with asses. But after everything came out, I'm going to trial with a public defender, fighting for my life, and I'm with these dudes and there's no help in my favor. Why fall and do life for these guys that wanted to get me murdered? Wow. So what Taz is saying here is the fact that he's doing all this is because he was not provided a lawyer by ARAB. And it looks to me like ARAB provided No Breaks Braz's lawyer. So, Taz, I don't understand what you're doing. Maybe they didn't get you a lawyer because you took out Robbie Johnson, who was a member of their own group. You took out Robbie Johnson, who was a member of OBH. Who would want you as a part of the group after you did? Who would defend you? Who would put legal counsel up for you after you did something like that? Killing a member of your own crew. Arab putting his name involved in that would just put so many negative headlines from a career that is blowing, a career that is blowing through the roof right now. You put yourself in this predicament, Taz. Nobody can come and save you at that point when you're fighting a murder one charge. You had to do all this snitching to turn your murder ones into murder threes. It's pathetic. So then Mr. Goldman responds to this. Taz just put it all on the line, and Arab and Hans's lawyer responds to this. So what I'm hearing from that, and see if this is correct, what you're saying is you're prepared to lie to help yourself, correct? No. Lie to protect yourself. No. He just said no, the court says. Didn't you just, Judge, next question. Didn't you just say in the beginning of all that, yeah, all that was lies? That's because at that point in time, you didn't want to do the time that they were telling you that you were facing, correct? It wasn't like I didn't want to do the time. I was trying to cover me and my so-called homies' tracks. Let's take your homies out of this. So now you're telling us that you were prepared to lie to protect your tracks, correct? I'm not going to say correct on something I don't agree to. So you're saying today the only reason you did this was to protect others and not you. Is that what you're saying? I don't understand your question. What are you asking me? Now, even though they said to you that they were going to gauge you in what happens by your answers to that question, you still got third-degree murder in the Robbie Johnson case and not life in prison. You said that at least 3 times, the court says to Mr. Goldman. Do you remember yesterday you said that you made a telephone call to Robbie on the day of the murder to set this up to get some glass from him? Do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember back in July 26th of 2018, you told them that Robbie Johnson gave you glass, you were confused because you thought you were supposed to get some coke from him. Do you remember telling him that? Yeah. That was a lie, was it not? No. What? No. Glass. I didn't know what glass was. I'm thinking I'm getting crack cocaine from him. I didn't know what glass was. Well, if you were confused, you were confused because you were telling the agents you expected to get some coke, but you got instead glass, correct? Incorrect. I told the agents I thought I was going to get crack, not no glass. I didn't know what glass was, which is meth. I didn't know the meaning of meth is called glass. Well, you were a regular attendee at the mansion over there all the time when you weren't in prison, so if you're telling us that you didn't know what glass was, then I guess you never heard from any of our clients the use of the word glass. Is that correct? No. Well, then you did know what glass was. No, I didn't. Could you help me understand that? What do you mean? Listen, you're a man of the streets, are you not? Yeah. And being a man of the streets, you know what stuff's called. Like you called marijuana leaves, correct? Who called marijuana leaf? I saw in one of your interviews. Leaf? No. Called marijuana weed, loud, gas. I never dealt with meth, so I don't know the terms of meth. It's called glass. I didn't know that term. But yesterday you testified and you just acknowledged that you called Robbie Johnson and you said to Robbie Johnson, I'm going to come over to get some glass. You used the word yourself. Afterwards, I found out what it was. So you're telling us that you had no idea when you're setting up this homicide and asking him to give you glass that it was methamphetamine. Right. October 2nd, 2019. Just recently, an interview with one of the FBI agents, they wrote that they spoke to you and you said you drove back to the apartment where you picked up your 9 cig and called Mr. Johnson to get some gas. Not gas, glass. Mr. Wetherall, Judge, if we're just going to read 302s, we'll just admit them all. The court overruled. Mr. Goldman, that's not the way it works. The court overruled. Go ahead. What's the question? Mr. Goldman, you said that, did you not? You got to repeat that whole question over. One of these agents wrote that you said to them, you drove back to your apartment, you picked up your 9 cig, by the way, that's a weapon, yes, semi-automatic weapon, yeah, and called Johnson to get some glass, right? Right. And you're now telling us that even though you're setting up a murder and you're setting it up for Johnson to get your glass, wouldn't you agree with me? You must know that Johnson was a glass dealer or supplier? I didn't know that neither. Well, you certainly expected him to give you glass, right? To front you glass. You testified to it yesterday. Yeah, absolutely. And only 4 days later, you meet with a confidential informant who says that you know he wants to buy meth, and you take him this glass that you got from Johnson, correct? Correct. Mr. Stewart, isn't it correct that what you're doing here the past 2 days is you're trying to get back to get the deals that the agents and the police officers offered you back in July of 2018? Wow. Let me read that one more time. Mr. Stewart, isn't it correct that what you're doing here the past 2 days is you're trying to get back to get the deals that the agents and the police officers offered you back in July of 2018. These deals were that the 2 gun charges of 15 years else would run concurrent rather than separate, making it 15 years instead of 30. But also, they promised him that this 32-year-old could potentially be out of jail by the time he was 42 years old. Wow. Let's get back into it. So you're asking me what I'm doing today, sitting on the stand, is cooperating because of a deal that the agents and the DA said what the judge supposed to be sentencing me. No, I'm cooperating on my own free will because dudes that I was involved with backdoored me and didn't have my back, and they let me fall and wanted me to fall. Man, for some stuff that I did on my behalf from an order on Abdul West. And what got me on the stand today cooperating is because of the accusations that Abdul West was saying to other people in the jails. So the dude, Robbie Johnson, that I allegedly killed was supposed to kill me, and it all comes out. The truth comes out. So this is why I'm here today, for the courtroom testifying on my behalf. You want to get even with him? Let him finish, the judge says. The witness, no, it's not getting even. I'm not getting even. I feel betrayed, like they feel betrayed. I feel wrong for, taking a life. But us as street guys, if somebody was to kill one of y'all siblings or brothers, the first thing on your mind is revenge. However it comes, whether it's justice or whether it's from y'all own hands. Yeah, I'm guilty of the charge of killing Andre Moore. He shot my brother in the head. There's 3 other people. I don't got nothing to do with that. You talking about what I'm charged with today. So, okay, you asked about Robbie Johnson. The hit came from Abdul West for whatever selfish reasons he wanted to kill him. I carried it out. Why? Because I was considered and looked at as a member of OBH. For whatever selfish reasons, you decided to take this young man's life away. Isn't that correct? All right, you can answer that yes or no. The witness, what young man? Answer yes or no. By Mr. Goldman comes in. For your own selfish reasons, you took the life of Robbie Johnson, correct? Incorrect. Not for my selfish reasons, for that man's selfish reasons. So there was nothing in it for you. You just did it with nothing to gain? Really? You just kill people for no reason? I don't run around the city killing people like I'm a mass murderer or a serial killer or a hitman. 4 bodies? Mr. Witherall comes in. Objection! The court, okay, that will be stricken. The witness, 4 bodies? The court, no, don't answer that. Any more questions? Mr. Goldman, nothing. All right, redirect. Mr. Witherall. All right, so now we're going to get into the redirect examination. If anybody was wondering who Mr. Witherall was, he is the assistant U.S. attorney. This is crazy because now we're going to get right into the redirect examination by Mr. Witherall. So he comes in. Mr. Witherall asks, Mr. Stewart, I just want to clear up a few things. Let's talk about the transcript that Mr. Goldman went back to several times. That's on July 26, 2018. That's the date you got arrested on federal charges, correct? Correct. The statement, it's not a profiter statement with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI. They Mirandaized you and were trying to get a confession out of you. Court, explain what you mean by Mirandaized, Mr. Rutherford. They gave you your Miranda warnings, correct? Correct. You agreed to speak to them and they wanted to talk to you about the case, right? Right. And then in the Mirandaized statement, you weren't being completely honest with them. Correct. You were trying to protect people. Mr. Goldman, Your Honor, he always leads. The court, don't lead the witness. Mr. Witherall comes back. Were you completely honest? I wasn't completely honest. Why not? Because I was trying to protect myself and my dudes I was linked with and connected with. They talked about that possible cooperation during that Miranda statement, correct? Correct. And I denied it. None of that. The court, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Miranda, you may have heard that word. It refers to a very famous U.S. Supreme Court case several decades ago where the court held that in questioning people you are suspected of criminal activity, the investigating officer have to give the person constitutional warnings about their rights to counsel and whatever they say can be used against them. That's what Miranda means. Go ahead. Then Mr. Witherall continues, that cooperation, when they were talking to you about possible cooperation, that never materialized, correct? Objection, Your Honor. This is his witness. Overruled. No. Mr. Witherall continues, the state charged you with murder. Correct. You pled guilty to murdering Robert Johnson at the state level? Correct. A state judge is going to sentence you on that, right? In addition, Judge Bailson has the power to charge you, to sentence you based on that same murder, correct? Correct. And the maximum that Judge Bailson can sentence you to, do you know what that is? 360 to life. The court, 360 what? To life. No, what do you mean by 360, the judge asked. 360 months to life. Okay, thank you for clearing that up, Taz. 360 months to life. The court, any further questions? Mr. Witherall, one more, Judge. Mr. Witherall, do you know the rap video that Mr. Goldman's speaking about that he said was Mr. West talking about you murdering Robbie Johnson? Do I know about it? Have you seen it? I seen it one time, but I don't. it is a rap video about you murdering Robbie Johnson, or is it a rap video about him ordering you to murder Robbie Johnson? It's more of him ordering it. Mr. Meenan, objection. That's subjective, Mr. Wetherall. I withdraw the question. The court, you withdraw it, Mr. Wetherall. I withdraw it. The court, the answer should be stricken. The jury should disregard the answer. Recross. It's limited to the redirect. So we got a recross examination going on here. Mr. Goldman steps back up. Mr. Stewart, one-on-one, okay? You don't expect to get 360 to life, do you? I don't know what to expect to get. I could get life. I could get 20 years, 30, 15, who knows? Only this man right here got to say so. By your agreement, it just depends what these four people say to you, the judge, correct? By the plea agreement. Huh? It's all reliant upon these four gentlemen say to the judge about your cooperation, correct? Well, this is interesting because when 6ix9ine was originally charged with 60 plus years, we all know what he ended up getting. And now he's free. The man got 2 years to serve, while Mel Murda got 14 years, Shotty got 15 years, a couple other guys got some really high up numbers, and as I said, Kuda B is yet to be sentenced. So the judge comes back and he's referring to the prosecutors and the case agents when speaking about the four men who are going to have the direct result of his case. So the witness comes back in. Correct. Mr. Goldman states, and this man here said to you with the task force officer that you'll be out by the time of the age of the task force officer Stevens, who was 42 years old. The court, that's repetitive. Any other questions? Mr. Goldman, thank you. Nothing, Your Honor. The court, anybody else have recross? All right, the witness is excused. The witness excused. The court, please call the next witness. Mr. Wetherall, we're going to recall Agent Becker to the stand, Your Honor. The court, state your name for the record. You're still under oath. The witness, Special Agent William Becker. Oh, this is interesting. So we're going to get a special agent on the stand now. So Mr. Wetherall, the U.S. attorney comes in, the assistant U.S. attorney. Good morning, Mr. Becker. How are you? Good morning. I'm well. Agent Becker, last time my colleague spoke to you, he